our family, we have 8 hungry mouths and 1 tight budget. So in this homemaking video, I'm going to share a very ancient way of cooking that I have only recently started to explore. It's a way of cooking that I thought our family hated. Turns out I was just doing it wrong, and I'm learning how to do it right now. I'm also going to share where to find affordable seasonings and spices, because let's face it, spices are what take what would be a very cheap and affordable but bland food to the next level. I'm going to talk about some places that I found to purchase dishes affordably. We're going to talk about some digestive support herbs, along with a couple other affordable food choices that a lot of people overlook. By the way, a little spoiler alert, I'm going to teach you guys how to make the absolute best ever taco seasoning from scratch. And of course, there will be a devotional titled Keeping the Faith Through Tight Times. The hard part of being on a budget with your groceries is if you have more refined taste and are a foodie and love a wide variety of foods. A lot of the more affordable foods are really basic, like beans, potatoes, pasta, bread, and certain kinds of vegetables. Beans are, of course, very affordable. They're one of the more affordable food groups that you can have, especially if you are on a low income. And potatoes are another low income food group. Well, I think we all know that spices are the key to making things interesting. And lately, I figured out a new way to spice things up in the kitchen, literally. Lately, I have been falling in love with Indian cooking. What a learning curve this whole process has been. I mean, we're talking ingredients I've never even heard of before, like asafoetida. Is there any more of that mango? I'd never even heard of cashmere chili until recently. Apparently you can make like a substitute for cashmere with paprika and cayenne. A friend of mine introduced me to an Indian restaurant in a city about an hour and a half away. After the third time of going, I am addicted to the food there. I love how so many of the dishes are made with wholesome and healthy ingredients. And I especially love that they're affordable. So I have been trying to teach myself how to make more of the Indian dishes that I've been loving at this restaurant. One of the recipes is Ragda. I think I'm saying it right. Ragda? Maybe I'm not saying it right at all. Anyways, I've been finding a lot of my recipes at a website that has videos, and the website is called Haber's Kitchen or Habar's Kitchen, and they have all of the recipes that I have looked for that this restaurant that is near us makes. I am looking for a good Indian cookbook though. Before I continue talking about this, I want to give you a tip for healthy and possibly affordable meat. If you don't have any hunters in your family, ask around. Ask your friends if any of them hunt. If you have friends that hunt or fish, see if there's something you can barter for in trade for some meat. Maybe you could offer to purchase their hunting license or tags or fishing license, or maybe there's something else you can barter with. This might be a good way for you to get your hands on some more affordable meat. And by the way, if you're wondering what this is, it's fat that I have rendered to make soap with, which is another way to save. One of the delicious and an important ingredient in a lot of Indian dishes is a ginger garlic paste. And you make this by mincing garlic and ginger together and then basically blending it in a blender. I learned it's a good idea to make large quantities of this and freeze it in thin sheets like this in the freezer so that I have it always on hand, because it does take a little bit of time to make. In these scenes, I'm making ingredients for samosas, which I discovered you can take the samosa ingredients and make patties with them as well. So good. I'll link to this recipe in the description box below. I was making a major mistake whenever I cooked any Indian dish. And one day I got in touch with one of my longest time friends that I've known since childhood. I learned that she has been learning Indian cooking as well. It's funny, it sounds like we started learning it around the same time, but she had devoted a lot more time into researching it and learning it. So she was able to help me pinpoint some of the mistakes I was making. And one of the biggest mistakes I was making was not using fresh ingredients for my curry. And the other mistake I was making was using too much curry. So the pre-ground curry powders that you buy are not good. Not good at all. I learned you want as freshly ground as possible. Now, apparently, according to my friend, it's hard to find that without mixing it yourself, but I found a pre-mixed one that is absolutely lovely. All you have to do is grind it yourself. I was having a lot of trouble locating ingredients, the unique ingredients for Indian cooking, and I was really surprised to find, I think, all of them that I need from Azure Standard. They have the tamarind chutney. They have this one that I have trouble pronouncing. It's not asbestos. Why does that come to mind? Definitely not asbestos. It's asafoetida. Asafoetida, that's one of these strange ingredients. There are just so many unique ingredients that I have never used before. Indian cooking is not easy. It is very difficult. I used to think I hated Indian cooking. Well, turns out I was just not good at it. I was trying to do some of the Indian cooking recipes that I would find online, and I didn't really know what I was doing because I've never really done it before. And Indian cooking is an art. So after I went to this Indian restaurant, I realized, okay, I see why people rave about this. The second time I went, I was like, this is good. The third time, I was like, okay, I'm addicted. That's all there is to it. I gotta have this. I gotta learn how to cook this way. And of course, my favorite aspect to cooking this way is that so much of the ingredients that are used, the bulk of the ingredients, are so affordable. And this is like the most perfect and flavorful way to cook for low income living. So far, the most expensive ingredients are the spices. But as mentioned, I did find them at Azure, and they are actually the most affordable place I found for them too. Azure Standard has been the most affordable place for spices that I found for years, and they have high quality, potent spices too. In these scenes, I have an Azure Standard haul that I'm going to be putting away, and I'll be making some gluten-free flour mix, but I'll talk more about Azure Standard towards the end of this video. So stick around for that if you want to know more about that. For now, I thought I would take a moment for half of the devotional. Being low income can be stressful, very stressful. As you know, if you're in this boat, when you're struggling to make ends meet and you barely have money for enough groceries for your family for the week or the next couple weeks, it can be quite tempting to wonder if the Lord sees you, if He sees your predicament and your needs. I have 3 videos that I will link to in the description below for you that you might find some help in if you watch. They're sharing chapters from our story and when we lived in the Midwest after we had started to buy a very, very old, very small, rundown home. And we had a growing family, and the home was just in constant and dire disrepair. And we lived that way for a long time, years. And I've shared all about that in the other videos, so I will link to those below to help those of you in that kind of situation. One story I didn't share though was about beans and falling ceilings, and I don't know why I remember this situation. Maybe it's just so I can share it with you today, but this one particular day stands out in my memory. In this particular story, my husband and I had been married, I think around 9, maybe 10 years, and we had just had our 4th, and we kept finding mold in our home that had to be eradicated. So we were able to get the mold out, but the problem was we didn't have the money to fix the area. So we had these big holes on the interior of the wall. So we had a home that was basically under construction, but not progressing for a very, very long time. And I remember one time in particular, I was sitting with my baby and I happened to look up. Now, I was already having a bad day because it seems like it was a Sunday or a Saturday, and my husband was having to work. I was discouraged about that, and it had been a hard day with the kids. I had not been getting any breaks because my husband was working so many long, hard hours. So I was with the kids like 24/7. Our house was super cluttered feeling because it was very small and there were a lot of us, and we were homeschooling, so there was always lots of books, and it just felt like all a mess. And to top it all off, we were having beans for dinner. And I get really tired of beans quickly. And so I was just not looking forward to dinner. I know, poor me, right? And I happened to look up because the ceiling was where I would look sometimes so I didn't have to see like the under construction home. And I looked up and the ceiling was starting to collapse in the kitchen. I noticed that it was starting to sag. My heart just sank because I was like, oh no, the ceiling is falling for one. And for two, that is the only place that I have to look where it's not a mess. And at that point, it just felt like everything crashed in on me. And I just started crying. My heart was a mess. I felt like a mess. My home was a disaster. And it wasn't because I wasn't trying to be a good homemaker and keep it clean. I was doing the best I could with what I had. But at that point, I felt completely forgotten by God. I called my husband at work and I told him what was going on. And he came home that night and took a look at it and realized that it would be a fairly simple fix. All that needed to happen was he needed to get some new screws and reattach the drywall to the rafters in the ceiling. And it ended up being okay. When the whole world feels like it's crashing down on you, and when it feels like everything is overwhelming you, and like you're never going to come out on top, and like you're just being buried. Something I want to point out is that that feeling usually doesn't happen overnight. Usually that feeling comes a little piece at a time. Quite honestly, for many of us, that feeling probably began, and we didn't even realize it, in childhood or in our youth. It's usually a belief that has roots in abandonment or feeling unloved, and a belief in that God doesn't love you. From there, every time something bad happens, we take it as proof that, oh, see, this must mean that God must not care. He's not there for me. He doesn't care for me. And there's 3 things you can do to get out of that mindset. Be sure to stick around to the end, because in the last chapter, I'm going to share the 3 things that you can do to free yourself from the chains of that negative feeling and belief. My oldest son has a lot of allergies, so I have been having to learn how to make almost all of our seasonings from scratch lately, including taco seasoning. Well, I am pleased to tell you, I have discovered and developed the most amazing taco seasoning recipe ever. This is seriously the best taco seasoning we've had. And I made it myself. It is corn and gluten-free. For your convenience, I have put this recipe on the blog for you. It is printable and there for you now, so you can find it in the description box below. Since we're on the topic of budget eating, I wanted to share with you where I get most of my dishes for eating and cooking. You might be surprised to know almost all of our dishes are secondhand. I've been working on this copper collection almost since we moved in. I found this piece here and this piece at an antique store for $8. Yeah, I'm not kidding. One of them might have been from the Goodwill, but I know they were $8 or under. I remember specifically they were $8. I noticed like online, if you go to buy copper, anything online, you'd be paying around $50, $60 for like a pan, a small saucepan this size. I got this pan, I have the tag right here. I got this one for $12. This one was a little more because it's bigger. It was $14. And then this piece right here, I think the tag's still on. This one was $8 too. I like to use these for certain dishes that I cook because copper disperses the heat more evenly. Anyways, this looks expensive, but again, it wasn't. I mean, $8, $8, $8, and I've collected these over 3 years, and then these pieces were $12 and $14. So, moral of the story is try your antique stores and your second-hand stores, thrift stores, if you're looking for things like this that are really expensive normally. You can never know what you're going to find, and thrift stores are a great resource for things like brass and copper pieces. Yeah. I'm really excited that this collection is complete. I have been trying to complete this collection for a couple of years now. I've been slowly collecting these pieces as I could find them. Antique stores are your hotspot for copper and brass. For other dishes, I like thrift stores. as well as places like the Dollar General. You guys know I love thrift stores for clothing, baskets, and so many things. I think around 80% of our home is thrifted. I have had some quite perturbed people leaving nasty comments because I've talked about being low income, but our home does not look low income. And let's just say, well, the joke's on them. If you want to learn how we appear to live rich, but do so on a low income, I have a video that you're going to love in the description box below. I want to talk to you about dishes though. If you're going to buy secondhand dishes, there is something you really need to know. A lot of dishes on the market contain lead. If they've lost their shine, it means they've lost kind of their protective coating, and that it's possible the lead can start leaching through into your food. Now, this is based off of research I did about 2 years ago. You can check into it for yourself and see. So this is something you want to know about when you go out to buy your dishes. You might look for a lead-safe brand. I personally went with Corel and or stainless steel for the most part. Since I read that dishes like this with a nice sheen on them still have the protective coating and are supposed to be okay, I will get them sometimes, but not very often. Used to be you could only find stainless steel dishes at Amazon, but now you can find them in Dollar General stores. I do buy plastic for some things like soap making and also for farm related activities where I'm pretty sure that chemicals won't be leaching into our food. So I have been on a Indian cooking food journey for a month and a half now, and there are certain seasonings that were missing in the dishes that I was making. And I knew that there was seasonings I wasn't putting in because I couldn't find them. I couldn't find them anywhere. We have a huge city near us. I searched half the city. I didn't go to the complete other side of the city because that would have taken like 3 hours, but I searched the one side of the city and I couldn't find where to get any of these ingredients. So I came home, was looking on Amazon, looking at other places, still having trouble finding all of the seasonings. I thought, well, let me just try Azure Standard and see. I doubt they'll have any of this, but we'll see. Well, guess what? They had every one of the Indian seasonings I was looking for. Somebody at Azure Standard or somebody that's stalking Azure Standard likes Indian cooking like I do, I think, because there's just no explanation. They had everything, some really rare ingredients too. Those of you out there that love Indian foods, like I do, Azure is your place for the seasonings. One of the reasons that I am wanting to learn Indian cooking and get as into it is because I'm kind of hoping it might help me lose weight. Of course, as good as it is and as much as I want to eat of all of it, that might not be the case. But one of the things that I've learned recently in my journey with my challenge with weight lately is that I have not been eating enough. One thing that I'm trying to do is increase my protein intake. I don't eat very much. I don't eat breakfast usually. I've started trying to eat a protein-packed breakfast, but I'm not a big breakfast person. I usually eat lunch and like a modest lunch, and then dinner is salad. That's all I eat, and yet I keep gaining weight. And so I've been learning that that is a big mistake once you get past 40 and start to enter the perimenopause years. If you're trying to lose weight in the perimenopause years, you have to start lifting weights, which I'm doing, and start eating high protein, which is very hard for me because I'm really not that crazy about meat. And of course, meat is so high protein. So I'm trying to find other ways, like Indian food cooking, to increase my protein. And this dish is really good for that because it's made with chickpeas. A cup of chickpeas has almost as much protein as a cup of chicken. I didn't realize it till I was partway into it, but this way of eating is also very healthy. Spices like turmeric, the cayenne, and even the curry, I mean, think about it. They're all herbs and they're stimulants to help us digest. So much about this way of cooking is packed with dense nutrition and, of course, tantalizing flavors. My oldest son, he's a young adult and he is allergic to corn, wheat, soy, walnuts, and sesame. And we have discovered that he too loves Indian food. We realized so many of the Indian recipes can be made gluten-free, and they don't have corn and they don't have soy. I think we might have found a new cuisine.
Cuisine, a new cuisine that is really going to work for both him and I for sure. So far I'm having fun. This has been a learning curve. I tried to do Indian cooking years ago and it was a major flop because this is an art. So one thing I've learned today is be careful not to over salt. You want just the right amount of salt with this, not too little, but too much. Like for some dishes, you could put the same amount of salt in and it's perfect. For Indian dishes though, you can oversalt them really easily. I am an improvisational cook. I'm constantly improvising according to what I know I like. But with Indian cooking, that's one of the mistakes I made the first time was I was improvising. When you don't know what you're doing with Indian cooking, I've learned you can't really do that. Not until you know what you're doing. This is my Azure order. I do have a bag of einkorn flour that I also got, which in one of my previous videos, I said I was going to try to switch our family over to einkorn. I'm not sure how well that's going to work anymore because einkorn is really expensive and I didn't realize how expensive it was until I bought my bag of einkorn that I thought was going to be a lot larger, and it's actually much smaller for a very high price. So I don't know if it's going to work that we're going to be able to switch our family over to einkorn. We might just have to settle for organic plain wheat. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I was super excited to find that Azure Standard has Worcestershire sauce that is corn-free, soy-free, and wheat-free. If you guys are new here, you don't know this, but I have like the best ranch dressing in the whole world. If I don't say so myself, well, my family thinks it's the best anyways. But my oldest son hasn't been able to have any since last summer because he's allergic to corn, and we found out last summer Worcestershire sauce usually has corn in it. I found Worcestershire sauce from Azure without any corn, soy, or wheat. I got 3 bottles so that I can start making ranch salad dressing that he can have again. That's gonna be awesome.
Here's another new vitamin I'm going to start taking to see if it helps me gain some strength back. I will definitely keep you posted as to how well this works. As a home educating family, one of the things that I've always done with my kids, and one of our very favorite things that we've done in our homeschool, is whenever we're learning about a place or a culture, we learn to make the food from that culture. We have made some really interesting dishes over the years. We have made doro wat and injera with the whole platter. We had everything on it that is traditionally put on injera. We've of course explored France through food. My oldest son even bought me Julia Child's volumes of Mastering the Art of French Cooking, which I showed here a couple years ago. We've had a lot of fun with Russian foods and Asian curries. We learned we like to grow Thai basil just for that each year. And we have done some South American dishes, of course Mexican dishes. Whether you're a home educating parent or not, I highly recommend using Cuisine to explore the world with your children. In these next scenes, I am going to can some pinto beans. I like to do this once a year or twice a year in the winter or the early spring because that's when I have a lot of empty jars. While I do this, let's continue our talk on keeping the faith through tight times. I have 3 things that have helped me and I'm going to share with you. The first one is to start to find Bible verses that you can place around your home, and that's what I did. I started putting Bible verses all over my home to remind me that God does care and that He does see and that He is going to take care of our family, or was going to take care of our family. Here are a couple. Psalms 61:2. From the end of the earth I will cry to you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Philippians 4:6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. Matthew 6:33. But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Isaiah 26:3. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. And then we have one of the top passages for this kind of situation, Matthew 6:25-34. Therefore I say unto you, be not anxious for your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor yet for your body what you shall put on. Is not the life more than food, and the body more than the raiment? Behold the birds of the heaven, that they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, and your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are you not much more value than they? And which of you by being anxious can add 1 cubit unto the measure of his life? And why are you anxious about concerning raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil toil not, neither do they spin. Yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God doeth so clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, of little faith? Be ye not therefore anxious, saying, What shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or with wherewithal shall we be clothed? For all of these things do not the Gentiles seek? For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have a need of all these things. But seek ye first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things shall be added unto you. Be not therefore anxious for the morrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient unto today is the evil thereof. I mentioned there's 3 things. The second one is, how do we put these things into practice? Like, how do we actually tangibly get out of that frame of mind that we are forgotten, God doesn't care? Like, how do you get out of that negative mindset that it's not going to be okay, it's not okay, and it's never going to be okay? How do we break out of that? Well, one of the ways that I found to break out of that mindset in my life was to, even though my home was not nice, I still would walk into every room and I would thank God for each and every space. So I would go from room to room and just thank God for the space, even though I didn't like it, even though it was, a under construction mess. And even though it was too small, I would go through and I would thank God room by room. And it was easier some days than others, but without fail, when I did that and I would do it regularly, it did help. And the third thing that I found to help is to get out of my head, to think of people that I know that have also been through hard times. And it's really helpful if you can actually pick up the phone to call them. Now, back in the day when this was, calling was expensive, so I couldn't just pick up the phone and make a phone call without it costing us. But nowadays, it's a lot easier to do. Pick up the phone maybe and call somebody that you know has been through something similar. Because when you see that and you talk to people that have been through something similar, you feel silly almost when you realize, well, does their hardship mean that God doesn't love them or doesn't favor them? And when you look at it from that perspective, the whole thought just becomes ridiculous, and you see, oh, this is just life. This is how it is, and this is how it is for a lot of people, a lot of good people, and that really helps to put things into perspective. I call this positive comparing or healthy comparing, where you compare yourself to the same kinds of people that are good people that love the Lord and are doing the best they can, but they have also experienced hardships, just like the Bible says that we all will. So just to recap, the 3 things are reading the promises of God and about the goodness of God and remembering that He's got this, He's got you. Number 2, having gratitude. And number 3, iron sharpens iron, looking around at people that can encourage you and that have been through similar and the same. I hope this message has inspired you to keep the faith. Keep seeking first the kingdom of God. And I hope it's helped you to rest in His love for you.